Stepping into the limelight once again, it is the first direct upgrade to the iconic Saber Tiger line, sporting a relatively different take on the original meta change this model did possess. It is STG01C, Excize C, with a mostly new kit of Shoot TC, Charge Claw C, Hammer C, Biped Legs, and a new leg ability called Trapper, which buffs all leg stats, minus armor and heavy limit, for every trap placed by the user. Now, at the same time of Excize C's release, so too Unitress C also got the same treatment. While these additional twisty, crafty mode variants of original attacks really aren't anything new, long story short, they're basically just slightly perked up or spec'd up versions of moves that got the tune-up treatment or even may not have. So nothing relatively new per se, but still very useful all the same with the extra bonuses that do come along with them. Excize C is most certainly no exception to this either, as a master of collateral damage pretty much right from the gate. Shoot TC, or simply put, Shoot Trap C, is a new setup skill being introduced, which is, long story short and as expected, it's basically just Shoot Trap but with the post tune-up bonus of an extra 50% damage when triggered. So instead of a lot of passive damage every single time a trap is placed, this trap, especially to any active shooter types on the enemy team, is immensely potent. Now, if that doesn't give you enough of a description already, imagine basically Archbeetle one-shotting himself trying to hyper beam you, because the extra damage bonus basically forces his head to self-implode on itself upon being triggered. This is the power of a boosted shoot trap, and this is also why the tune-up version of Smilodon, the original STG type, was so massively important to current competitive meta to act as a deterrent against anyone using Max Shot. Excize pretty much takes the hard work and the grinding out of it and gives that option to you away. And with a heat stat of over 1100, he can very easily slap this baby down and not even have to worry about it before anyone else on the field moves. Right arm of Charge Claw C is another relatively new skill being brought to the table, but simply put, it is just his original basic Charge Claw, which is a scatter type charge element attack, so it'll damage one part normally, two others randomly at that, and you also get bonus damage relative to the amount of charge in Excize's gauge, at the cost of consuming just a little bit to access that bonus. No charge, no bonus damage. But Charge Claw C takes that an extra step further with an extra additional 50% damage charge to damage bonus when activating energy. So if you weren't already really slashing things in half or to ribbons already, this makes it incredibly easy for you to do so. Even though you don't necessarily need that charge in order to use Charge Claw at its capacity, because even with the base damage of 1883, you're still clocking some pretty good base damage from there. That extra charge will come as an additional bonus if you do choose to go after it. Hammer C on the left arm is a skill calling back from Dorcas C, who was one of the first models to get the crafty mode treatment. Well, simply explained, it's just your post tune-up hammer type, so it will have a higher ascension bonus on your base power when attacking. So even though you will hit notably harder, it is also worth noting that the heat and cool stats there at your mid to 500s are definitely not super high, and neither sadly is your success in the mid 800s. So even though he will be swinging and hitting notably harder if the hammer does land, it is going to be kinda hella blind, so a little word of warning and caution there if you do choose to use it. Biped legs means he's going to have relatively solid coverage across most terrains pretty solidly, and his leg stats reflect this even easier. With a base mobility at 916, he's just a hair faster than his counterpart Unitress C as well, but that difference is still very subtly noticeable, but still very good for base speed on the field. An evade of 1190, almost 1200, means he's going to have a very easy time dodging or grazing a lot of incoming attacks, and especially even if he just feels like it. So you can kind of bank on him trying to keep his damage low as long as you can keep that at the full. A melee resist of almost 1600 and a shoot resist of 1033 means he's just a little bit better rounded than his counterpart as well in the damage reduction and the dodging department. So he can tank hits just a little bit better overall. At the cost though, his armor is actually just a little bit lighter than that of his counterpart. With a head armor of about 4500, arms at 3659 each, and legs at 4259. Like I said, he's a little lighter on the armor, but just slightly better in the damage reduction, which will kind of round it out just a little. When it comes to overall AoE and scatter damage, Excize and pretty much any model of the STG series in general leading up to Sabotalis has always been a model you really can't ever go wrong with using if you want to scatter damage and break a whole bunch of things at once when the time counts. Now, much like it was with Unitress as well at time of recording, this version of Excize also does take the meta change mode into an alternative take with his iconic crafty mode, taking a more bestial saber tiger-like appearance with the face mask and the claws on his legs. In this mode, he exchanges his kit out entirely for MedaBreak, Tsujigiri, Punishment, Multi-Legs, and the leg ability Bloodstain, which buffs power when attacking and breaking parts. Now, something to make note with this particular form of Unitress as well is he was already kind of a very aggressive model right out of the gate when he first meta changed in his base mode. So you really don't have to worry about trading too much of that right from the start as well when it comes to bringing a lot of base power to the. And this version of Unitress Excize is most certainly no exception to that either. Drive A is a brand new skill of MedaBreak, which, much like a lot of skills such as, say, Emit Blade or Emit Hammer or anything of the like, will consume 30 CG upon activation. But upon the activation and consumption of 30 CG, will also give you a double damage at ×2. It'll also provide the blow away effect, which will push the enemy away from Excize, and it will also provide a defense ignore, which means that you will be ignoring outright the enemy's damage reduction anytime they try to take a swing at you or try to guard against you. If you do not have at least 30 CG in your gauge, you are not allowed to use Break. So very similar to, again, like I said, Emit Blade and Emit Hammer, where you need that charge to use it. It is expensive to use, but if used correctly, this can be a very nasty skill if used correctly. Tsujigiri on Drive B is a conventional melee skill that has a very powerful damage bonus if you're able to unlock its condition. That condition is if you are able to successfully attack opponent from the backside. That is, if you hit somebody in their cooldown phase, your damage triples, and you get piercing damage on top of that, making it incredibly easy for you to take out enemies very, very quickly, as long as you're able to meet that damage condition. If you're somehow too early or just a hair too late on catching them on their backside, you instead will be dealing half damage. With a base power of over 1700, that's already going to be relatively solid right out of the gate. And looking at the triple base power there, eyeballing about 5400 or so, it's going to be a relatively nasty blow if he is able to successfully reach that condition. And with heat and cool in the low 600s to high 800s, this is something he can kind of recharge from relatively quickly and not have to worry about getting slapped in punishment. Speaking of punishment, on Drive C of punishment is a melee skill that when attacking a foe from the front. So in contrast to Tsujigiri, where you have to attack someone from the back, punishment bonuses gives you bonus damage of ×1.5 when attacking somebody from the front, and half damage if attacking them in cooldown. Additionally, punishment will also inflict 1 of 5 random ailments on the enemy upon attacking them. Those ailments in particular are Metaphor Seal, Bug, Thunder, Fire, and I believe Wave or Hold in particular as the 5th one in that list. So if you're not already attacking somebody with the intent to deal damage, you can also rely on the fact that you'll be able to inflict a lot of ailments at once on them if you're able to use this repeatedly. And speaking of that, look at that, none of his drives require CG to use outright, minus, of course, MedaBreak. So Tsujigiri and Punishment are basically conditional, positionally reliant attacks that you basically have free access of no matter which way you go. Multi-legs means he'll have relatively solid coverage on most terrains, and his leg ability and his leg stats do kind of increase and decrease just a little bit in trade. His shooting resist will go down notably to 822, but in trade his mobility will go up to 1000, his melee resist to 1560, and his evade to 1679. So he's going to have a much easier time running faster, dodging, and keeping damage low when attacking anything up close. At the trade, if they choose to snipe him from afar, he's probably going to be taking some notable damage to that. All this being said though, as a pure set score, I honestly have to rate Excize C a pretty well-rounded 7.5 out of 10. Much like his twin Unitress C, this model comes relatively ready to go right out of the box. Doesn't require a lot of CG to use immediately if you want to switch between his base and crafty modes, and if you choose to go after the charge reliancy for, say, MedaBreak or even Charge Claw C, you still get to benefit from those without really having to put in a lot of effort. And the deterrence of being able to keep a lot of shooters at bay with Shoot Trap C does give him an extra added intimidation factor on top of that. As mixed parts, I do have to rate him just a hair lower at a 7 out of 10 as well. Even though you're not really missing out on a whole lot with MedaBreak, Tsujigiri, and Punishment for a lot of positional with a lot of crowd control or conditional damage bonuses, Excize C is still a very well-rounded model that you can use pretty solidly out of the box, like I said, whether it means mixing his parts up across other bots, such as using Trapper on your passive-aggressive fighters with shooting or melee trap or something similar, or using Shoot Trap in your PvP to deter max shot users, or anything else of the like. It's still a relatively synergetic model you can't really go wrong with using if you do end up picking up.